candle burned, yet no flame appeared. Welcome to Faded Echoes. I am your host, Ombra. Drop a comment to share where you're listening from. I love seeing this community grow. Your insights make every mystery richer. Let's dive in. You never know which ring of the doorbell is going to cost Wolfe $10,000 worth of worry for a check that doesn't clear, and which one is just another salesman who doesn't believe in God, but does believe in himself. That Monday at 11:30, I had my money on the second category. The bell gave its usual well-bred buzz, and I glanced at the clock. 11:30 is a tricky time on West 35th Street. Wolfe is still downstairs in the office, pretending to work while really getting his stomach emotionally ready for lunch. If you're going to disturb the peace of the brownstone, that's the window to do it in, unless you enjoy being told in full sentences what an offense you are to civilization. I leaned back, gave my shoes a quick inspection, presentable, and went to the hall. Through the frosted glass of the front door, I could make out what looked like a hat with ambitions. When I opened it, the hat turned out to be attached to a woman. She was about 35, dark hair pinned back like she'd done it herself in a hurry and regretted it, and a face that had been told too often it was intelligent to waste time wondering if it was pretty. She was carrying a long, narrow cardboard box in both hands, like it was either fragile or sacred. Or both. "Good morning," she said. Her voice was downtown office, used to dictation and telephones, not shrieking at a butcher. "Mr. Nero Wolfe?" "Inside," I said. "Stationary. I'm the mobile unit. Archie Goodwin. Come on in." She stepped in, with one more glance back at the street than was strictly necessary, and I shut the door behind her. People who look back too much generally have either conscience trouble or company. Her eyes flicked once at the stairs up, once at the hallway arch to the office, and then fastened on me. "I don't have an appointment," she said. "That's all right. He doesn't have a conscience. If you've brought money, you're practically family." I gestured toward the office. "This way." She followed me, still carrying the box like it might explode if jostled. I opened the office door and let her in. Nero Wolfe was in his oversized throne behind his desk, shoulders filling the back of the chair, hands resting on the arms, brown eyes half-lidded in an attitude that could mean deep thought or not enough beer. Take your pick. The yellow shirt and brown suit were right on schedule. So was the expression. Wolfe does not like unannounced visitors in his house. He doesn't like announced visitors much either. But business is business, and the orchid rooms eat oil and coal as eagerly as he eats Fritz's veal. He let his eyes travel once from her hat to her shoes and back before they stopped at the cardboard box. "Yes, Archie?" "Call her for you," I said. "Carrying her own exhibit." "That's efficient. Miss—" She drew a breath. "Naomi Fielding, I need to speak to you urgently, Mr. Wolfe." "Do you?" Wolfe's tone said she might think she did, but he was reserving judgment. "Sit down, Miss Fielding." There was a moment when she looked at the red leather client's chair and then at the box, like she was trying to work out how to keep both dignity and grip. She ended up sitting and holding it across her lap, hands at the ends, fingers tense. "I apologize for intruding without an appointment," she said. "But if I'd called ahead, I was afraid I might be refused." "You might still be," Wolfe said calmly. "I am not a public utility. What is that thing?" She looked down at the box, then back up. "Evidence?" Wolfe's right eyebrow rose half an inch. That is his version of leaning forward and rubbing his hands. "Archie," he said, "help Miss Fielding to relieve herself of her burden." "That's one way to put it." I crossed and took the box. It was heavier than it looked, the weight solid and centralized. I set it on the corner of my desk. "Open it, Archie," Wolfe said. I lifted the lid. Inside, on a bed of crumpled tissue, lay a brass candlestick with a stub of white candle in it. Not just any candlestick either. The brass had been polished recently enough that it still had opinions about human fingerprints, with a base engraved in a pattern I couldn't identify, but would have happily faked to impress a girl. The candle itself was ordinary enough, except that the wick was blackened all the way down to the wax, as if someone had burned it without it shortening. Also, and this is the important part, it was glowing. Not like it was on fire. There was no flame, no heat, and no smoke. The tip of the candle, wick and all, gave off a faint, steady, yellowish light that was wrong for daylight. More like a tired little halo than a flame. No hum, no cord, no battery pack taped to the side. Just a candle that was disobeying some basic rules. I am not a chemist, but I know what a good gimmick looks like. "Okay," I said. "I'll bite." "Did you bring matches just in case it decided to go on strike?" "It hasn't gone out in 3 days," she said. "Not once." "Not that I know of." Wolfe's eyes had opened fully. "You might think you could interest him only with a plate of sauced sweetbreads or a rare orchid, but sometimes human beings surprise you." "A candle," he said, "apparently luminous without combustion." "Yes," she said tightly. "That's the phrase that's been used. A candle that glows without fire. And this," Wolfe went on, "has driven you to violate my privacy." "Why?" She swallowed, her hands twisted together on her lap. She had good hands for the city, well kept, no polish, a couple of faint ink stains on the right thumb. "Because it's a warning, Mr. Wolfe, and the man who left it can reach any place he wants to, including mine." "And yet," Wolfe murmured, "you have brought his token to my house." His gaze slanted to me. "Archie, the card." I nodded. I'd already been drifting toward it. Stuck in a slit in the side of the box was a folded calling card. I slid it out and opened it. On one side, there was nothing but a short, block-printed message in neat black ink. "Where the candle glows without fire, the truth is already burning." No signature, no initials. Just the quote marks around the sentence, like the author was quoting scripture from a religion he'd made up himself. I passed it over to Wolfe. He read it and let it dangle between his fingers. "Who delivered this?" he asked. "A messenger from our midtown office," she said. At least, that's how the doorman described him. Young, cap, gray suit. He said the man told him it was from the foundation, my foundation, and that I was expecting it. I wasn't. When I came home Friday evening, it was waiting inside my apartment. She hesitated. On my dining table, I live alone. I whistled softly. "How many people have keys?" "Just me and the superintendent," she shot back too quickly. "And I don't think he breaks into tenants' apartments to deliver decorative metaphors." Wolfe ignored the quip. "That happens sometimes to the best of us." "The foundation," he said. "What foundation is that?" "The Fielding Candle Fund," she said. "I'm its executive director." I turned my head to look at her. "That sounds like a charity for people who can't pay their light bills." "A memorial fund," she said, a little clipped. "My late father made his fortune manufacturing ecclesiastical supplies. Churches, synagogues, temples, candles mostly, and some textile work. After he died, his estate set up the fund. We provide grants to small congregations who can't afford what they need, and to artists who create liturgical pieces." She looked at the glowing candle. "This wasn't one of ours." "I see," Wolfe said. "You're affluent then?" "Comfortable," she said. "You can see my bank statements if you'd like." "We will get to that if it becomes relevant." Wolfe shifted, which is a big event. "Miss Fielding, why is a luminous candle with a sententious note a matter for Nero Wolfe? Why not for the police?" "I did go to the police," she said. "Saturday morning, I took the box to the station. The sergeant on duty looked at the candle, snorted, and called in another officer to enjoy the joke. They told me it was a prank, and I was lucky that was the worst thing that had ever been left in my apartment." When I insisted someone had broken in, they took down a report. No one has followed up. That, I said, is because breaking and entering isn't half as exciting as it sounds on the pamphlets. Also, because they probably tried turning the lights out and decided someone had put a bulb in the candle. Her eyes flashed at me. They did. It still glowed. One man even touched the wick with his finger. He jerked back. He said it felt wrong. There was no heat, but it wasn't cold either. She shook her head once. I sound hysterical. I'm not. No, Wolfe said. You sound exasperated. Archie. Yeah. I went to the wall switch beside the door and clicked it. The office dropped into the kind of gloom you get on a cloudy November late morning when New York can't decide whether to rain or just sulk. The only light came from the window behind Wolfe and the candle on my desk. The glow was more noticeable now, casting a soft halo over the brass base and a pale smear onto the blotter. The light was steady, not flickering. When I stepped closer, I saw the wick wasn't charred at the tip. It just looked black, like it had been painted that way. All right, I said. I'll concede it's cute. Touch it, Miss Fielding said. I haven't signed a waiver, I told her, but I reached out a finger and brushed the wick lightly. She was right. It didn't feel hot or cold. It felt like touching the top of a polished banister and getting the idea that underneath the wood was something that didn't care for being touched. I pulled my hand back. More because I don't like philosophical sensations before lunch than because it hurt. Well? Wolfe demanded. Feels like nothing, I said, but full of personality. If it's a trick, it's not the kind you buy in a magic shop for a birthday party. I flipped the lights back on. Wolfe's eyes were still on the candle. Has it been examined by an electrician, a chemist? He asked. No. No one has taken it seriously enough, she said. Or they're pretending not to. That's why I'm here, but the candle is only the beginning. The note, Wolfe murmured, lifting it again. Where the candle glows without fire, the truth is already burning. He sent her a narrow look. What truth is that referring to, Miss Fielding? She pressed her lips together. Whatever that truth was, it was not her favorite topic. I don't know, she said. Pooey. That reply is reflex, not reason. You have an educated face. You are the executive director of a foundation handling significant funds, I presume? He flicked the card. You understand symbols. Someone chose a candle for you as a message. You have received no previous threats. Not like that, she said carefully. We've had disputes. Unhappy applicants. Artists who felt they were owed more. A few clergy who didn't like where our board chose to donate. But nothing like this. What about inside the foundation? I asked. Any board members who object to the way you run the show? Accountants who think candles aren't what they used to be? Her eyes cut to me, then away. That glance had information in it. Of course there are disagreements, she said. Our board includes my uncle, Leonard Fielding, who runs the manufacturing company now, and Dr. Paul Morrow, an art historian, and Rabbi Klein, and 2 others. They're not in the habit of sending occult waxworks to my apartment. That, I said, is a relief. A board that starts sending occult waxworks is tough to hold together around budget time. She was losing patience. It made her more interesting. Mr. Goodwin, I'm not here because I'm afraid of a trick candle, she snapped. Then she visibly reined herself in and turned back to Wolfe. Mr. Wolfe, the night before I found the candle, I was at a private meeting, a confidential one. There was a discussion, a disagreement. The next day, this appears inside my home. Whoever sent it is telling me they know what happened in that room. What room? Wolfe asked. A conference room in our offices. On 54th. 8 of us were there. Board members. Myself. Our legal counsel. The subject was a grant renewal for a particular project and certain irregularities in the project's accounting. Her hands were twisting again. If someone outside knew of that discussion, it would mean there is a leak, or someone in that room is trying to frighten me into changing my recommendations. Wolfe closed his eyes briefly. That doesn't mean he was shutting her out. It meant he was putting her into a slot and labeling it. "The project," he said. "What is it?" "A commission," she said. 3 years ago, the Foundation awarded a substantial grant for a series of installations in urban churches throughout the city, contemporary reinterpretations of traditional altar candles. The artist, a man named Jasper Reinhardt, proposed a theme of light without flame, using modern materials, electric components, reflective surfaces. It was controversial, but the board approved it. Last week, an internal audit suggested that a portion of the funds had been diverted. Not stolen necessarily, but used for purposes outside the grant's scope. "And your recommendation?" Wolfe asked. "To suspend the final payment and request a full, independent accounting report before releasing any further monies," she said crisply. "Some of the others felt we should be more accommodating." I could guess which others. Relatives and reputation don't always get along with calculators and ledgers. "And this Jasper Reinhardt," Wolfe said. "Where was he during this meeting of the board?" "He was not present. He doesn't sit on the board. He called me afterward, though." She bit her lip. He'd been told by someone that his last installment might be delayed. He was angry. He accused me of trying to sabotage his career. "Who told him?" I asked. "That's just it," she said, leaning forward. "No one was supposed to. The discussion was confidential. The minutes are sealed. And yet the very next day, this candle appears in my apartment with that note. Mr. Wolfe, I don't believe in the supernatural. I don't think a candle glows without fire. But I do know that someone got into my home, left this on my table, and walked out again without leaving a scratch on the lock. That is a violation I cannot tolerate." "Understandable," Wolfe said. "But why me? You could, as you say, press the police further." She hesitated for the first time, as if the real reason had just been maneuvered into a corner. "I asked our legal counsel," she said slowly, "if he knew anyone who could be trusted to be discreet, to investigate privately. He said there was a man on West 35th Street who valued his privacy as highly as I value mine, and who might, for a price, help me defend it." "Name?" Wolfe inquired. "Carl Lentz," she said. "He's been our attorney for 8 years. He said you had worked together once in a very delicate matter, and that you treated him fairly." Wolfe's eyelids dropped again. "Lenz was a name I knew. He's the kind of lawyer who can make a subpoena read like a personal compliment." "That was 15 years ago," Wolfe murmured. "But it is true he comported himself decently." His gaze shifted to the candle once more. "You took advice, Miss Fielding. That suggests you are not as impulsive as your entrance might imply." She smiled without much humor. "Impulsive enough to walk into the home of a man I've never met and ask him to untangle a threat I can't even describe properly." "Describe its consequences, then," Wolfe said. "What is at stake? Money, reputation, freedom from annoyance." "All of the above," she said. "If there is fraud in that project and we ignore it, the Foundation could face legal trouble. Donors could withdraw. My father's name could be dragged through the tabloids. If there is no fraud and someone is using this to destroy Reinhardt's career out of jealousy or spite, then we are participating in a smear. And if someone can get into my home today to leave a candle, they can get in tomorrow to leave something else. I don't like being watched, Mr. Wolfe." "Nor do I," Wolfe said. "Yet I am, incessantly. By the city, by the tax authorities, by fools. I endure it. You, apparently, do not." She lifted her chin. "No, I don't." There was a silence. Wolfe is capable of stretching a silence until it creaks. She sat very straight, eyes fixed on him, waiting. "Archie," Wolfe said at last, "what is our bank balance?" Healthy enough to afford a candle, but not a church, I said. I knew the rough figure. We're solvent? Why? Because, he said, if we undertake to defend Miss Fielding's privacy and to expose whatever mephitic organism is crawling through her foundation, we may have to forgo other engagements. That would be an investment. He turned his head fractionally back to her. You understand, Miss Fielding, that my fees are not modest. I wasn't told they would be, she said. I brought a checkbook. That alone does not qualify you. Wolfe's tone sharpened. I dislike being dragged into other people's squabbles, nor do I relish trespassing in the affairs of boards and artists and donors, but he touched the edge of the card with a thumb. Someone has chosen an interesting way to assert power. This candle is an impertinence, and not only to you. It contends with physical law. I take that personally. I stared at him. Are you telling me, boss, that you're considering a case because a candle has bad manners? His mouth twitched. That is what other people use whole smiles for. I'm telling you, Archie, he said, that a man who sends symbols instead of bullets is more to my taste than the usual gun-toting idiot. If he is clever, I should like to see how clever. If he is clumsy, I should like to stop him before he graduates to something more banal. In either instance, it may amuse me. He looked again at Miss Fielding, and possibly reward me. She let out a breath she'd been holding. Then you'll take the case? Case, Wolfe repeated. We do not yet know whether there is a case. We have a candle, an intrusion, and a phrase. For the moment, we shall call it an inquiry. I will undertake an inquiry on your behalf if you are prepared to pay a retainer of $10,000 against future fees and expenses. She didn't blink. You can say what you like about people who administer foundations, but some of them understand numbers. Done, she said. I'll write it now. Not yet, Wolfe said. First, some conditions. You will answer questions fully and promptly. You will keep our involvement from your board and from Mr. Reinhardt until I instruct otherwise. You will not inform Mr. Lenz of any findings unless I approve it. And you will leave that candle here, in my house. I looked at him. Oh, great, I said. We're adopting it. I want it where I can see it, Wolfe said. It is an annoyance. I prefer my annoyances where I may observe them. He paused. And of course, there is the matter of my house. It was my turn. What matter of your house? This woman, Wolfe said irritably, has demonstrated either that she is being watched or that she is being played for a fool. Either way, she has chosen to bring the evidence here. If someone is bold enough to violate her home, he may be tempted to trespass in mine. That, Archie, would be an error I should very much enjoy correcting. So there it was. He hadn't accepted because of the money, or the candle, or the foundation. Well, not only. Someone had waved a possibility of trespass at him. If there is anything Nero Wolfe hates more than climbing stairs, it is the thought of an uninvited foot crossing his threshold. Okay, I said. Inquiry accepted. Candle impounded. Miss Fielding muzzled. I looked at her. You'll get used to it. He barks more than he bites. Usually I do the biting. Now what? Now, Wolfe said, we eat. Fritz will not be kept waiting. After lunch, Archie, you will accompany Miss Fielding to her office and to her apartment. You will examine the conference room where this confidential discussion occurred, obtain the names and contact information of all attendees, and inspect the site of the intrusion. I nodded. That was the standard operating procedure. He sits, I walk. And the board members, I asked. Do I introduce myself as your ambassador of goodwill or just as a boy with a notebook? For now, Wolfe said, you will say that Miss Fielding has engaged you to review certain administrative procedures in relation to security and confidentiality. If that seems implausible, improvise. You have a talent for babble that occasionally passes for sense. That's the nicest thing you've said to me this week, I told him. And it's only Monday. Miss Fielding rose, her shoulders relaxing for the first time. "Thank you, Mr. Wolfe," she said. "You have no idea what a relief it is even to have someone take this seriously." "Oh, I take it seriously," Wolfe said. His eyes went once more to the small, steady glow on my desk. "You have brought an insolence into my house, Miss Fielding. We shall see who is insolent." She didn't quite follow that, but she understood enough. She shook hands with me, firm grip, and left with the promise that she'd return at 2 o'clock to take me up to the foundation. When the front door closed behind her, I went back into the office and looked at Wolfe. $10,000 to babysit a candle, I said. "You're getting sentimental in your old age." "Nonsense," he grunted. "Turn off that contraption." "You mean the lights?" I flipped the switch again. The candle's glow sprang back into prominence, indifferent to the change. Its pale little aura sat on my desk, calm and smug like a cat that had just learned about birds. "I mean," Wolfe said, eyes lingering on it with something that wasn't quite dislike and wasn't quite interest. "That thing. We will dissect its meaning, but later. For now it may sit there and smirk." He levered himself up from the chair. "Lunch." I watched him go, big shoulders moving toward the kitchen and Fritz's miracles. Then I looked back at the candle. If there's one thing I've learned working for Nero Wolfe, it's that nothing that makes it into this office under the heading of annoyance stays that way. It either becomes a puzzle or a memory. The puzzle part was beginning. The candle glowed on, without fire. And somewhere between a foundation boardroom and a midtown apartment, something else was starting to burn. Wolfe went off to lunch with the leisurely dignity of a man whose metabolism had never heard of haste, and I stayed in the office with the candle. I don't usually babysit wax, but this particular lump of brass and paraffin had just bought us 10 grand and a stroll through a midtown foundation, so I figured it merited a few minutes of quality time. The glow hadn't dimmed. It wasn't stronger either, just steady, as if it had made some private pact with the laws of physics and was satisfied to violate them politely. I tapped the brass base lightly with a knuckle. No vibration, no hum, nothing but its simple refusal to act like a candle should. If it was a trick, it was a good one. And if it wasn't a trick, then I didn't particularly like the implications. Because the only thing worse than someone sneaking into a woman's apartment to leave props was someone sneaking in to leave metaphors. I shut the box and put it on a side table before heading to the dining room. Fritz had made veal with mushrooms, because Fritz knows when a man has taken a case. At least he knows when Wolfe has taken one, which is the only thing in this house that counts as a sign from above. Wolfe was already seated, unfolding his napkin like a judge preparing to hear arguments from a pie. He didn't mention the candle, or Miss Fielding, or the 10 grand. That was standard procedure. Wolfe doesn't believe in discussing business during meals. Food is food and thought is thought, and never the twain shall meet, except occasionally when he gets indignant and lectures both at once. Today he was quiet. That meant he was thinking. After Fritz cleared the plates and brought coffee, Wolfe finally broke his silence. "She is holding something back," he said. "You noticed," I said. "I thought maybe the candle had distracted you." He made a sound like a man rejecting an inferior mushroom. "She evades with care. People who are threatened usually rush toward protection. She selects her words as though they might be evidence." "They might be," I pointed out. "If someone's hijacking foundation funds, no one wants to be the one holding the bag when the auditors come knocking." "Possibly." He sipped his coffee. "But she's not frightened of scandal. She's frightened of someone's knowledge." "You mean the meeting?" "Yes. Someone in that conference room made a choice that unsettled her. The candle was merely a flourish, a theatricality." He paused. "I dislike the theatrical." "You like orchids," I reminded him. "Those are pretty theatrical." "Orchids have the decency to obey the rules of nature." He put the cup down. "This candle does not. Nor does the man who placed it." "You're assuming it was a man." I'm assuming the intruder was someone confident enough to enter an executive woman's apartment and leave an object for psychological effect. That is either a man or a rare woman with a taste for melodrama. His eyes flicked toward the hallway. At 2 o'clock, you will go with her. You will ask questions, observe, and irritate. Irritation exposes weak surfaces. And if the weak surface belongs to her, he shrugged a quarter inch, then you will find it. I let that sit while Fritz cleared the cups. When Wolfe pushes responsibility my direction, it usually means he already knows where the cracks will show, but wants to watch me trip over them first. At 1:50, I was in the front room with my coat on when the bell rang again. This time, I opened the door to find Miss Fielding looking crisper, calmer, and wearing the kind of tailored coat that says its owner doesn't worry about winter drafts or dry cleaning bills. "You're punctual," I told her. "That's a rare trait among people walking into trouble." "I've been punctual all my life," she said, stepping in. "It's one of the few virtues that consistently pays off." She glanced toward the office. "Is Mr. Wolfe coming?" "Not unless the laws of gravity get suspended along with the laws of combustion." I grabbed my hat. "He stays. I move. That's the system." Outside, the sky was threatening to rain without committing to anything. We headed toward 6th to catch a cab. As we rode uptown, she kept her hands clasped in her lap. She wasn't nervous. Nervous people fidget. She was tense, like someone whose mind was 5 blocks ahead of her body. "You didn't tell Wolfe everything," I said. "No accusations, just observation." She didn't pretend to misunderstand. "No, not yet. That makes my job harder. It makes mine easier." I waited. When she didn't elaborate, I said, "You said 8 people were in that meeting. Who do you trust?" Her eyes stayed forward. "No one trusts everyone in a boardroom, Mr. Goodwin. That's why they're boardrooms. But I trust motives. Some people want the foundation to thrive. Some want it to be an empire. Some want it to be a monument. Some just want it to be predictable. Depending on the day, any of those people might sabotage the others." "That's poetic," I said. "But it doesn't tell me who might leave a candle." "I don't know." She hesitated. "Or I know too many." We reached the foundation building on 54th. Glass doors, polished lobby, discreet security. New York philanthropy chic. As we crossed the marble floor toward the elevators, a man at the front desk watched us, not idly, evaluating. Miss Fielding noticed him too, but didn't greet him. That told me something. The elevator doors closed behind us with a soft sigh. "Let me guess," I said. "That guy downstairs is either harmless or important." Her lips tightened. "Both. That's the problem." We rose upward, the hum of the building enclosing us, and I felt the first threads of the case tug. Quiet, slow, but purposeful. Whatever glow that candle had, it wasn't half as unsettling as the way Miss Fielding kept glancing at the elevator numbers like they were counting down instead of up. The elevator let us out, onto a carpeted hallway with lighting soft enough to flatter anyone's conscience. Miss Fielding moved with purpose, not speed, her heels clicking just enough to signal authority, but not insecurity. She led me to a frosted glass door with the foundation's name etched in neat serif letters, then paused with her hand hovering at the handle. "Before we go in," she said, dropping her voice a notch, "you should know that everyone inside believes the situation is under control. They don't know about the candle, and they won't. Not yet." "I'm good at selective silence," I told her. "It's part of my charm." She gave me a look, somewhere between gratitude and skepticism, then opened the door. The reception area was modern, tasteful, and full of the quiet hum of people convinced they were doing important things for the benefit of mankind. A receptionist at a sleek desk greeted Miss Fielding with professional warmth, then offered me a smile that said I ranked somewhere above vendor and below endowment. "Conference room first," she said to me, gesturing down a hallway lined with framed photos of installations the foundation had funded. Candles in various artistic moods, from minimalist elegance to avant-garde attempts that looked like they were protesting electricity. As we walked, I said, "You mentioned 8 people were in the meeting. Who's in the office today?" "4, she answered. "My uncle, Leonard, Rabbi Klein, Dr. Morrow, and Mr. Varr, our operations director." "Any of them likely to get jitters at seeing a stranger?" "They all get jitters when they sense a shift in power, but you can handle that." We reached the conference room. "Hey!" She swiped a key card, opened the door, and motioned me inside. It was a typical midtown meeting space. Long table, ergonomic chairs, a projector no one had used since 2018, and a whiteboard that looked like it had survived several civil wars. But the air had a residue to it, the kind a room gets when people have argued inside it and then pretended they didn't. "Where were you sitting?" I asked. She pointed to the center-left chair. Uncle Leonard was at the head, Dr. Morrow to my right, Gabriel Varr across from me, Rabbi Klein further down. I checked the table surface. No scratches, no indentations in the wood where someone might have slammed a fist or a pen. No signs of tampering on the door, which didn't surprise me. This wasn't a room where people broke things. It was a room where they broke alliances. "Who took the minutes?" "Varr," she said. "They're locked electronically. Secure." "Yet someone told Reinhardt his funds were on hold." "Yes." "And you have no theory who?" She exhaled, and I could see her wrestling with the answer. "I have theories," she admitted finally, "but no proof. And theories without proof can destroy a reputation. I'm trying very hard not to let this turn into a witch hunt." "Fair enough," I said. "But the person who left that candle in your apartment isn't afraid of a witch hunt. They're afraid of you, or what you know." She looked sharply at me. Whatever she'd hoped to hide, it wasn't going to stay hidden long. Before she could respond, a knock sounded on the open door. A man with silver-streaked hair, a perfectly knotted tie, and the general air of someone who utters phrases like donor relations, walked in. He stopped when he saw me. "Naomi," he said, "I wasn't aware we had visitors." "Gabriel," she replied smoothly. "This is Mr. Goodwin. He's consulting with me regarding some internal review questions." He smiled at me with the warmth of a radiator in February. "Internal review?" I wasn't aware anything required reviewing. "That's why we're reviewing it," I said, giving him my best cheerful blandness. He didn't like that. His mouth tightened, but only a fraction. "People who manage foundations train their faces the way some people train dogs. Rigid posture, minimal barking." "I trust everything is in order?" he asked Naomi. "It will be," she said. "Is my uncle in?" "Yes. He wanted to speak with you." Then, glancing at me, "Both of you, apparently." That wasn't the most welcoming invitation I'd heard, but I followed them back down the hall. As we approached a corner office with glass walls and a private view of a building so ugly it had to be expensive, Miss Fielding whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "My uncle won't appreciate surprises." "That's all right," I murmured back. "I'm full of them." She opened the door. Leonard Fielding stood behind his desk, a solid-looking man in his late 60s with a jaw that could crack walnuts and an expression that suggested he had already cracked several this morning. His suit was expensive, his shoes shined, and his eyes sharp in a way that belonged more to a manufacturer used to managing factories than a philanthropist managing goodwill. "Naomi," he said, with a nod that might have passed for affection if you squinted. "And who is this?" "This is Mr. Goodwin," she said. "He's assisting me with a matter related to last week's discussion." His eyes narrowed. "What matter?" "It concerns confidentiality," she said evenly. He did not sit. That was intentional. People who remain standing in their own offices are making a point, usually that you're the one who ought to feel unsettled. "I wasn't aware we had a breach," he said. "We might." she answered. I'm taking precautions. The man turned his attention to me. Mr. Goodwin, what exactly is your purpose here? Observation, I said. Evaluation. Basic fact-finding. I don't bite unless I'm fed. His jaw tightened. This foundation has run cleanly for decades. I refuse to let paranoia infect it. She's not being paranoid, I said before I could help. Myself. Someone got information they shouldn't have had. Someone acted on it, and someone wanted her to know. Leonard's gaze snapped to Naomi. Is this true? She held steady. Yes. And you didn't tell me? I'm telling you now. He stared at her for a long 3 seconds. Then he said, We will discuss this with the full board. Privately. No, she said quietly but firmly. Not yet. That surprised him. It surprised me, too. There was steel under that tailored coat. I'll decide when this becomes a board matter, she added. For the first time, his facade cracked, only slightly, but enough. Very well, he said, though the words sounded like they'd been dragged out of him. Proceed with your review. His glance at me made the word feel like a splinter. But tread carefully. This is a place for discretion, not disruption. Discretion's my middle name, I said. It should be your first, he muttered. We left the office, walking back toward reception. Naomi didn't speak until we'd passed 2 corners and turned into a quieter hallway. He's furious, I said. Yes, she replied. But he's also afraid. Of what? That something might be uncovered that he can't control. That was the moment her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and stopped walking. Her expression wasn't fear. It was something colder. Mr. Goodwin, she said, handing me the phone with a motion that felt almost mechanical. Look. The text message had no sender name, just a number. The message read, Light without flame, truth without mercy. You're already late. Attached below it was a photo taken inside Nero Wolfe's office, and right in the center of the frame was the glowing candle. The photo hit me like a stiff jab to the ribs, sharp, quick, and designed to get my full attention. Wolfe's office, unmistakable, the big globe in the corner, the faint edge of one of his custom bookcases, the high-backed chair with enough personality to demand its own zip code. And on the desk, right where I'd left it, sat the candle. Glowing, smug, photographed from no more than 6 feet away. That meant someone had been in Wolfe's office. Recently. Very recently. Miss Fielding watched my face like she was waiting for a diagnosis. I handed the phone back carefully. When did this come in? 30 seconds ago. Her voice was low, tight. You saw me check my phone. Yeah, I took a breath. This isn't just a warning anymore. It's a demonstration. She swallowed. Someone is telling us they can go anywhere, or telling us we can't stop them. I thought fast. We're leaving, now. What about no speeches? I gestured down the hallway. Move. We covered ground quickly without running, which is a trick I've perfected from years of escorting people who were about to faint, scream, or confess something incriminating. She kept pace with me, though her jaw was set like she was biting down on glass. In the elevator, she finally said, Mr. Goodwin, was anyone home? When that photo? Fritz was, I said. And Wolfe, if he wasn't upstairs with the orchids. I didn't add what I was thinking, that if someone had gotten past Fritz, they were good. If they'd gotten past Wolfe, they were miraculous. The elevator doors opened, and the moment our feet hit the marble lobby, she quickened her stride. The receptionist glanced up. Gabriel Var's eyes flicked toward us from the corner glass office. Everyone sensed something was off, but no one said a word. Out on the sidewalk, we caught a cab on reflex alone. I gave the driver the address and leaned back, pulling out my phone. No missed calls from Wolfe or Fritz. That was not comforting. He should have noticed, Naomi murmured. Not necessarily, I said. If the picture was taken earlier today, before we left, then someone timed the text for dramatic effect. And if it wasn't, then we're about to walk into a very loud, very annoyed, very immovable wall named Nero Wolfe. She didn't smile. Couldn't blame her. Traffic crawled, because this is New York and even emergencies have to get in line. By the time we hit West 35th Street, my nerves were doing a two-step I didn't appreciate. I was out of the cab before it stopped rolling. Miss Fielding followed, close. I opened the brownstone door fast enough that I nearly startled myself. The front room was exactly as we'd left it. So far, so good. But Wolfe's office was the real test. I reached the door, turned the knob, and stepped in. Everything was quiet. Wolfe was in his chair, and that alone was reassuring enough that my shoulders dropped half an inch before I remembered to put the paranoia back on. He lifted his eyes toward us. "You are early, Archie, and agitated. Why?" I scanned the room. Candle on the side table, box closed. Just as I'd left it. No sign of disturbance, no footprints, no shift in the air that said someone else had been there. "Because someone sent Miss Fielding a picture of your office," I said. "Taken from inside, with the candle." Wolfe's expression didn't change, which for him meant an earthquake was happening internally. "Show me," he said. Naomi handed over the phone. Wolfe took it between finger and thumb the way some people take venomous insects. He studied the photo, turned the screen once, then handed it back. "When was this sent?" "A few minutes ago," she said. He grunted. "Fritz!" From somewhere in the house came a startled, "Ja, Herr Wolfe," and fast footsteps. Fritz appeared in the doorway, towel still over one shoulder. "Has anyone been in this room?" Wolfe demanded. "No, sir," Fritz said immediately, earnest to the core. "I came only once, 10 minutes ago, to dust the shelf. Nothing was disturbed. And earlier, while Archie and I were at lunch?" "No one," Fritz insisted. "I passed the door twice. I saw nothing, heard nothing." Wolfe waved him away. Fritz retreated with the expression of a man wondering whether dusting might lead to being accused of treason. When he was gone, Wolfe turned to me. "Archie, describe the angle of the photograph." "About 6 feet back from the desk, slightly to the right. Probably standing near the globe." He nodded. "Taken by a human being in this room, but not taken today." "You're sure?" "Of course I'm sure." He jabbed a finger at the box. "The candle was on your desk all morning. You moved it before lunch. You did not move it back afterward. Therefore, the photograph predates your relocation of it." Miss Fielding let out a soft exhale. Not relief, not fear, something in between. "So someone was in here," I said, "yesterday. Maybe last night." "Yes," Wolfe replied. "And they expected you to bring the candle here. They anticipated it. They planned for it." That didn't sit well. Wolfe doesn't like being anticipated. It's a personal insult. "So they were watching her," I said, "and maybe watching us." The phone buzzed again before anyone could comment. She looked at it, startled, then handed it to me without speaking. Another message. "You protect the wrong flame." Below it was a second photo. This one wasn't taken indoors. It showed the same candlestick, same design, same perfect polish. Except it wasn't in Wolfe's office. It was sitting on the hood of our cab from 10 minutes ago, and behind it, blurred but unmistakable, was the shape of our two silhouettes as we walked toward the brownstone. I stared at the photo long enough for the pixels to start feeling personal. The cab was unmistakable. The chipped blue fender, the dent near the headlight, even the driver's reflection warped in the windshield. And there, perched dead center on the hood like it owned the taxi and the whole city, was the candle. Still glowing, still defying the laws of candle behavior. Behind it, two shadowed figures, us, caught mid-stride on our way back to Wolfe's front door. Someone had been close enough to reach the cab between the time we stepped out and the time I opened the brownstone door, close enough to watch us without my noticing. That was the part that stung. I have a decent eye for tales, and I don't like learning I've been outplayed. Wolfe held out a hand. I placed the phone in it. He studied the image, and this time his nostrils flared. That's Wolfe's version of pacing the room and shouting oaths. "This is recent," he said. "Yeah," I agreed. "Very." "The candle," he said, "has not been removed from this room since Miss Fielding delivered it. It is still where you left it after lunch." "Which means that's a second candle," I said. "Same design, same glow." Naomi's voice was tight. "He has more than one." "He has at least two," Wolfe corrected, handing the phone back. "You see? The message is not merely about observation, it is about duplication, resources, preparedness, someone with foresight." I looked at him. "Someone who can get within 5 feet of us and drop a glowing candle on a cab hood without raising a single eyebrow. No ordinary prowler," he said, leaning back in his chair. "This individual enjoys the theatrical. And Archie, he's mocking you in particular." "He's going to regret that," I said, though my stomach wasn't as confident as my mouth. Naomi remained standing, her hands clasped, shoulders tense. "Mr. Wolfe, this is escalating. Whoever this is, whoever wants to frighten me, they're not just invading my home or sending riddles. They're watching every move we make. They knew I'd come to you. They predicted it." Wolfe gave a slow nod. "Yes, that is the conclusion. Someone with knowledge of your habits, your concerns, your schedule, and your thinking. She fell into the nearest client's chair. Someone in the foundation." Wolfe didn't deny it. That alone was enough to unsettle her. I said, "There were 4 people in the building today, besides staff, right? Your uncle, Dr. Morrow, Rabbi Klein, and Var. And any of them," she said, "could have slipped information to the wrong person, or be the wrong person. Or," I added, "one of them has an accomplice outside." Wolfe drummed a thick finger on the armrest. "Archie, lock the front door." That was not one of his usual directives. I went and slid the bolt with a click that sounded louder than it should have in the quiet brownstone. When I returned, Wolfe had closed his eyes. Not out of fatigue, but concentration. "Miss Fielding." She straightened. "Yes." "Tell me," he said, "every detail of the meeting last week. Every remark, every tone, every expression. You will repeat it precisely." Her eyes widened a fraction. Now, Wolfe echoed. "Before your recollection is polluted by fear or supposition." She nodded and drew a breath. But before she could begin, something else happened. The house phone rang. Not the office phone. Not my desk phone. The house phone in the hallway, one that almost no one ever uses except Wolfe, Fritz, and emergencies. All 3 of us turned toward the sound. "Archie," Wolfe said quietly. I was already moving. I opened at the office door and stepped into the hall. The phone was still ringing, steady and calm, like whoever was calling had all the time in the world. I picked up the receiver. "Wolfe residence," I said. "Goodwin speaking." There was no voice on the other end. Just a soft, low sound, like a hum. No words, no breathing, just that faint vibration. At first I thought the line was bad. Then the hum shifted. It flickered. Once, twice, then steadied into a sound I recognized. The faint electrical buzz of the candle's glow. "Cute," I said into the phone. "Got a voice to go with the light show?" No answer. Just that steady, unnatural humming. And then, faintly, a click. Something metallic. Maybe glass tapping metal. The sound of a candlestick being set on a hard surface. Then the line went dead. I hung up and returned to the office. Wolfe opened his eyes. Well? Either the candle learned how to use a telephone, I said, or our friend likes audio effects. They called the house line, hummed into the receiver, then set something down, sounded like a candlestick. Naomi shivered despite herself. Why? What does that mean? It means, Wolfe said, that he is no longer content merely to observe. He wishes now to provoke. And he's doing a damn good job, I added. Wolfe lifted his chin a fraction. Archie, search the ground floor, thoroughly. Then check the stoop, the vestibule, and the immediate exterior. See if any new ornament has been provided for our edification. Naomi looked at me. You think he's been here again? Wolfe answered for me. He called the house phone. That line is not public. That alone is intrusion. Whether physical or technical, we shall determine. I headed for the door. And Archie, Wolfe added. Yeah? Be attentive. That was Wolfe's version of don't get killed. I stepped out into the hall again, senses sharp. The quiet of the brownstone didn't feel the same. There's calm and then there's watched. The brownstone isn't noisy, even on its best days. Fritz glides instead of walks. Wolfe's footsteps are an event, and I tend to make sound only when it serves a purpose. But that afternoon the house had a different quality to its silence, like someone had draped a sheet over the whole place while we weren't looking. Still, when you work for Wolfe long enough, you learn the first rule of tension: don't let it make decisions for you. I moved through the hall slow and methodical, checking corners, listening for any breath that didn't belong. Nothing felt disturbed. The parlor was neat as a sermon. The dining room smelled faintly of mushrooms and Fritz's wounded pride. The kitchen was immaculate. Fritz's domain is sacred even to intruders who have no respect for locks. I opened the basement door, listened, and shut it again. Nothing but darkness and the faint metallic scent of stored preserve. Whatever had called, whatever had hummed, it hadn't lingered down there. That left the front entry. The vestibule was exactly as we'd left it. Coat rack, umbrella stand, mirror still tilted at the angle Wolfe prefers so he doesn't accidentally see more of himself than he intends. No glowing souvenirs, no unexpected packages, no candle perched anywhere it shouldn't be. But something felt off. The kind of off you can't see but you know is there, like a draft from a door that wasn't opened but somehow still moved the air. I stepped outside onto the stoop. West 35th Street has its own rhythm. Delivery trucks rumbling somewhere in the distance, a taxi honking because it can, someone shouting at a dog that has no intention of listening. Normal. Everything exactly as the city tends to be. Indifferent, but not uninterested. I scanned the sidewalk, the parked cars, the opposite building windows. No glowing brass, no mysterious observers holding candles like trophies. The cab from earlier was gone. Either the driver had finally gotten tired of waiting for us, or our admirer had decided the hood was no longer a fitting stage. I checked the mailbox slot. Empty. I checked the doorknob. Warm from my hand. Nothing more. Then, just as I turned back toward the house, something caught my eye. A thin smear on the top step. Not liquid, not dust. More like residue. Faint, iridescent. The kind you'd miss unless the light hit it at a specific angle, which it just had. I crouched and touched it with my fingertip. Dry. No odor. Nothing recognizable. But the color, just a shimmer of pale gold, reminded me unpleasantly of the candle's glow. I didn't like that. I stood, brushed my hands off, and headed back inside. When I returned to the office, Wolfe hadn't moved. His eyes flicked open as soon as I entered, which doesn't mean he'd been resting, just storing energy for something he considers worthwhile. Well, he asked. No new candles, I said, but someone dropped a little party favor on our front step. A trace. Faint. Same sort of sheen you get from the glow on that candle. Might be coincidence, but I don't believe in coincidence unless it insults me directly. Naomi rose halfway from her chair. Someone was at the door? Briefly, I said, and recently. Wolfe grunted. He wished to be seen without being seen. Typical. She turned to him, panic edging her composure. Mr. Wolfe, if he can approach your home without anyone noticing, if he can photograph your office, if he can follow me, what does he want? Wolfe sighed, though not from annoyance. From calculation. There is no value in terror for its own sake. Terror is a tool, a lever. Whoever is orchestrating this wants movement. Yours, Miss Fielding, or ours. I took a seat on the edge of my desk. He wants us off balance, and he's good at it. No, Wolfe said sharply. Not good, not yet. He has theatrics, yes, but he wastes them. He reveals himself too easily. That was a surprise. You think he slipped? Of course he slipped, Wolfe said. He left traces. He called the house phone. He placed a second candle where it could be photographed. A truly competent intruder would not have indulged in such flourishes. He wants attention. Therefore, he is not as clever as he thinks. He was clever enough to get in here, I pointed out. Wolfe gave me a look. Archie, you have never been subtle. Our visitor is subtle, but not invisible. Naomi said, What do we do? Because I can't go back to the Foundation pretending this is a minor issue. I'm already in deeper than I can manage. Wolfe's gaze softened the smallest fraction. Miss Fielding, you're not expected to manage it. Archie and I will manage it. Then he frowned at me, though Archie's methods may require supervision. That's the nicest thing you've said about me today, I muttered. Wolfe ignored me. We must determine who among your colleagues had motive to frighten you, and the means. Begin with the meeting. You will recount it now. She steadied herself, folded her hands, and began. The discussion started with Jasper Reinhardt's latest accounting report, she said. The irregularities were significant enough that I proposed delaying the final payment and requesting verification of his expenses. I watched her closely. She wasn't hiding now. She was reliving it. My uncle disagreed. He wanted the payment approved immediately. He said the project had taken too long already, and donors were waiting for results. Dr. Morrow supported him. He argued the artistic value outweighed the administrative hiccups. Var insisted the report could be revised. And Rabbi Klein? Wolfe asked. He supported me, she said. He said transparency mattered, that if the Foundation compromised its principles once, it would never recover its integrity. So the room was divided, Wolfe said. And loud? Not loud, she corrected. Tense. Tense enough, I added, for someone to take it personally. She nodded. Everyone left unsettled. No resolution. The minutes were sealed. No one outside that room should have known anything. Yet someone did, Wolfe murmured. And someone used that knowledge for spectacle. Before he could continue, the doorbell rang. A long, slow chime. It didn't buzz like it does when someone's impatient. It rang like someone pressing the button with a single, deliberate finger. Naomi went rigid. I stood. Wolfe opened his eyes fully. Archie, he said, answer it. Which was his way of saying, whatever is on the other side of that door, meet it before it meets us. The bell didn't ring again. Whoever was outside wasn't the fidgety type. They were patient, too patient, and that alone told me this wasn't a delivery man asking for a signature. I crossed the hall with the kind of stride that says I'm prepared for trouble but not volunteering for it. Miss Fielding stayed seated in Wolfe's office, rigid as a struck match. Wolfe didn't move, which was normal, but his eyes followed me. Less normal. I reached the door, paused, and listened. Nothing. Silence, but not the good kind. The hall felt like someone had inhaled and forgotten to exhale. I opened the door. Standing on the stoop was a man in his late 50s, tall enough to make the doorway seem like an inconvenience rather than an entry. He wore a grey wool coat, tailored and expensive enough to signal a comfortable relationship with accountants. His hair was silver but thick, swept back in a style that probably required both a mirror and an audience. His face was a study in calm, smooth, dignified, and practiced, and in his left hand, held lightly as if it weighed nothing, was a black leather briefcase. No candle, no props, just a man who didn't need them. "Mr. Goodwin," he said as if I'd invited him over. "I'm Gabriel Varr." My hand stayed on the door. "I remember you from the Foundation. You're a little far from 54th. He gave a pleasant smile that didn't make it anywhere near his eyes. When Miss Fielding left the office abruptly, I grew concerned. Her departure was disquieting. "You followed us." "Followed?" He looked amused. "No, I simply anticipated where she might go. And when the Foundation's front desk informed me that a private inquiry was being conducted, I felt it prudent to introduce myself to the investigator." He said all this in the tone of a man offering to lend a neighbor sugar. I weighed my options. Slam the door. Invite him in. Ask him to reschedule for the next millennium. Instead, I said, "You came alone?" "Of course." He lifted the briefcase slightly. "I brought documents that may clarify certain misunderstandings. I'd prefer to discuss them inside. Miss Fielding is here, I assume?" He was too calm, too composed, and too quick. No one leaves their office, crosses midtown traffic, and rings your doorbell within minutes unless they had motivation prepackaged and ready to go. Or unless they were frightened. But Gabriel Varr didn't look frightened. He looked like a man who believed he was arriving just in time to steer the narrative, which, incidentally, is something I never like. I opened the door halfway, not fully, and stepped aside. "Come in." He entered with the unhurried grace of someone accustomed to entering rooms that immediately shift to accommodate him. I watched his shoes cross the foyer. Italian, polished. Shoes like that don't walk fast, but they tend to walk accurately. I led him to Wolfe's office. Naomi stood when he entered, not because she wanted to, because her body demanded it. He gave her a small nod. "Naomi," he said warmly, "I was worried about you." That did it. Her jaw tightened. "I didn't ask for your concern, Gabriel." "No," he said, "but you seem to need it." Wolfe cleared his throat. One sound. No more. It cut through the room like a gavel. Varr turned toward him. "Mr. Wolfe, a pleasure." Wolfe did not extend his hand. He never does unless he has to. "Your arrival is unexpected," he said, "and unwelcome." Most people retreat a step at that. Varr didn't. He only adjusted his grip on the briefcase. "I believe there are misunderstandings regarding the financial audit and the Reinhardt Commission. If Miss Fielding has involved a private detective, it is imperative that the board's position be represented fairly." "Oh," Wolfe murmured. "And you are the board?" "Hardly, but I am responsible for operations, including fiscal protocol." "Protocol?" Wolfe's eyebrows rose a millimeter. "You mean you are responsible for ensuring confidentiality?" Varr's gaze sharpened. "Yes. And yet," Wolfe continued lazily, "someone breached that confidentiality within hours of your meeting. Someone informed Mr. Reinhardt about the possibility of suspended funds." Varr did not blink. "I'm aware, and I came here to address exactly that concern." He placed the briefcase on my desk without waiting for permission. That alone annoyed me on a molecular level. I moved to stand beside him, not close enough to escalate anything, but close enough to make a point. Varr opened the briefcase. Inside was a neat stack of documents, each clipped with color-coded tabs that screamed efficiency, bordering on compulsion. "These," he said, sliding out the top packet, "are revised audit summaries. I believe the irregularities you discovered will appear significantly less concerning once reviewed properly." Naomi took a step forward but stopped short of taking them. We haven't asked for revised summaries. We asked for verification. And you shall have it, Var said silkily. But first we must ensure the organization is not destabilized by fear or speculation. With all due respect, your abrupt departure today created room for both. That isn't why she left, I said. He turned to me. Mr. Goodwin, is it? That's what it says on my letters of introduction. He studied me with polite dismissal. Yes, the private investigator. Private adjutant, Wolfe corrected. Archie is my employee. Continue. Var nodded once, accepting the correction with the compliance of a man who takes note of such things for later. My concern is simple. The Foundation cannot afford internal suspicion. Whatever happened at that meeting, and whatever prompted Miss Fielding to seek outside help, should be addressed before it spreads. Naomi stared at him. Gabriel, why are you really here? That was the first moment he hesitated. Subtly, a single fraction of a second. Enough for me. Enough for Wolfe, too. He recovered smoothly. Because I care about the Foundation, and I care about you. Wolfe huffed once. Sentiment is rarely a credible motive. Try again. Var smiled faintly. Very well. Because someone is manipulating this situation. I do not know who, but I suspect they intend to discredit Miss Fielding. Naomi blinked. Me? Yes, he said. You. Wolfe's eyes narrowed, not in suspicion, but interest. Continue. Var leaned slightly forward. Your position, your influence, your authority over funds. If anyone wished to destabilize the Foundation, or perhaps gain leverage over it, you would be the ideal target. The candle, the intrusion, He stopped. A beat of silence. Naomi's face drained. You know about the candle? The room went still. Wolfe did not move. Neither did I, and Var realized too late what he'd said. He straightened, cleared his throat, and attempted a recovery. I was speaking hypothetically. No, Wolfe said softly, almost kindly. You were not. Var's fingers tightened on the edge of the briefcase. I think, Wolfe said, that you should sit down. And for the first time since he'd walked into the brownstone, Gabriel Var looked like a man who had very much miscalculated his entrance. Var didn't sit. He moved his weight back half an inch. Tiny, but all the tells that matter are tiny. And for a moment I thought he might bolt. A smart man might have. But smart men also have egos, and his was large enough to need its own coat rack. He squared his shoulders instead. Mr. Wolfe, he said evenly, if this is an interrogation, I fail to see the basis for it. Wolfe's tone was calm enough to chill water. The basis is the word candle leaving your mouth with the familiarity of a man who has no right to possess it. Var inhaled once. Slow. Miss Fielding's tone when she left the office suggested distress. I assumed, wrongly, that the cause might involve this candle she mentioned in her initial complaint to me. He said it smoothly. Too smoothly. Naomi snapped her attention to him. Gabriel, I never told you anything about a candle. I haven't spoken to you since the meeting. A hesitation. Again, brief. A man adjusting his facts mid-stride. I may have inferred it, he said. You said your home was breached. I imagined the intruder might have left an object behind. An object, I said. Out of the infinite menu of objects in the universe, you jumped directly to candle. He clenched his jaw just enough to show the strain. It was an assumption. A symbolic gesture seemed likely, given the nature of the Foundation. Pfui, Wolfe murmured. Symbolism does not spring unbidden from the mind of a bureaucrat. I stepped closer to Var, not threatening, just present. Mr. Var, let's keep this on the level. You mentioned the candle because you knew about the candle, and the only people who know about it are the three of us in this room and whoever broke into Miss Fielding's apartment. And whoever broke into this house, Wolfe added irritably. Var's composure cracked. Not much, but enough to show the hairline fracture. He placed both hands on the briefcase as if anchoring himself. I came here, he said, because I believed Miss Fielding had made a mistake involving outside parties without the board's consent. That is my sole reason. Your sole reason, Naomi repeated, her voice low. Then why did you rush to my home once you saw I left the office? Why bring documents you prepared so quickly they couldn't have been compiled after I walked out? And how? Her voice sharpened. Were you ready to discuss the candle unless someone told you about it? For the first time since he'd stepped in, he looked directly at her, sharp, almost pleading, as if asking her to recall a memory where his innocence existed. But she didn't blink. He shifted to me. Mr. Goodwin, you are misunderstanding. Am I? I crossed my arms. Because someone left a glow-in-the-dark calling card on the hood of our cab not 10 minutes before you appeared at our door. Someone who moves fast. Someone who wants Naomi rattled. Someone with access to foundation schedules, internal documents, and her trust. He flinched at that last word, not visibly to most eyes. But I've seen liars blink through bulletproof glass. Wolfe cut in, voice measured. Mr. Var, have you ever encountered anything resembling the candle Miss Fielding brought here? No. Too quick. Have you been in possession of a similar object? No. Have you ever seen one, even in passing? A pause. No. A poor liar is a tedious creature. Wolfe sighed. Archie, sit him down. Sit yourself down, I said, tapping the chair. It's soft, won't bruise you. He didn't argue this time. He lowered himself into the red leather chair with the stiffness of a man expecting a trap to spring from the upholstery. Wolfe steepled his fingers. Mr. Var, I will be precise. You have information you should not have. Your arrival was suspiciously swift. Your readiness to discuss internal disagreements amateurishly convenient. And I suspect, very strongly, that you are not the architect of this scheme but a pawn in it. That makes you dangerous, in ways both intentional and not. Var swallowed, and the motion was jagged, as if a new truth had lodged itself in his throat and refused to go down. Pawn, he said softly. Yes, Wolfe said. You lack the personality for psychological torment. You are officious, not imaginative. You are meticulous, not dramatic. The mastermind behind these gestures, these glowing theatrics, relishes spectacle. You do not. Naomi whispered. Then someone is using him. I said, or someone's scaring him the same way they're scaring you. Var's hands tightened on the briefcase. You're wrong, he said, but the conviction was gone. If someone at the Foundation is behind this, I would know. No, Wolfe said. You would think you know. That is different. I stepped around him and closed the office door. He watched me do it. The click made him wince inside his skin. Mr. Var, I said, here's where we stop dancing. Let's assume you're telling 90% of the truth. That leaves 10% of wiggle room, the interesting 10. So start at the beginning. The meeting. The fallout. Anything odd. Anything that changed. He stared at his hands. They were steady, but not from confidence, from effort. Finally, he spoke. After the meeting, he said slowly, I returned to my office. I stayed late, very late, reviewing numbers. Alone, I asked, at first. At first, I repeated. His voice dropped. Someone came to see me, unannounced. Naomi stiffened. Wolfe leaned forward slightly, which, in his universe, is akin to most people leaping across a table. Who? Wolfe asked. Var's eyes shifted up, haunted by something he hadn't expected to say aloud. I don't know his name, he said. I've never seen him before. He wasn't staff. He wasn't a donor. He wasn't security. Describe him, Wolfe said. He didn't say much, Var continued. He just walked into my office as if he'd been instructed to. I asked who sent him. He didn't answer. He only handed me an envelope. What was in it? I asked. Var swallowed. One sentence, written in block letters. He hesitated. Naomi whispered. What did it say? He exhaled, defeated. It said, "Light without flame is the cost of silence." The room chilled. Even Wolfe looked darker around the eyes. And you stayed silent, I said quietly. Var nodded once. That, Wolfe said, was a mistake. Before he could respond, the house phone rang again. Short, sharp, one note. And this time when it rang, the candle in the corner flickered. Just once, like it was answering. Wolfe's eyes closed. Archie, he murmured, get that. But as I stepped into the hall, a knock hit the front door. Not polite, not patient. 3 loud raps. Someone who didn't care about stealth anymore. Someone who wanted in. The raps weren't the kind you ignore, and they weren't the kind that ask permission. They were the kind that announce a problem coming through the front door whether you want it or not. I reached the vestibule with one eye on the door and one ear tuned to the house phone still ringing behind me. The knocking stopped. Not because the person had changed their mind, because they were waiting. I took a breath, put a hand on the knob, and opened the door. Standing on the stoop was a man in a dark overcoat, rain still clinging to the fabric even though the sky hadn't committed to rain yet. His hair was close cropped, his jaw tight, and his eyes, gray and sharp, went straight past me, as if checking the angles of the hallway. And he was police. You can spot them by stance alone. Shoulders set to square off trouble, gaze trained to size up stories before they're told. He held up a leather wallet with a badge. Detective Marcus Delaney, he said. Homicide. Homicide, I repeated, because nothing about this day had been wrong enough yet. You might have the wrong address. No one's dead in here. A muscle in his cheek twitched. Let's hope it stays that way. I need to speak with a Miss Naomi Fielding, immediately. Behind me, I heard the soft scrape of her chair inside the office. Delaney's tone wasn't optional. Now, Mr. Goodwin. He didn't know my name from social circles. Someone had given it to him. That didn't make me feel warm. I stepped back, holding the door. He entered with the alertness of a man expecting guns behind wallpaper. I shut the door, and as I led him down the hall, I said, "If you're here to make a donation, you're early. The charity auction's not till spring." He didn't smile. Save the jokes. A man was found dead 2 hours ago on West 54th, outside the foundation building. I felt that one in my stomach, quick and cold. Who? Name was Jasper Reinhardt. I stopped walking. Delaney didn't. He went right past me toward the office door. Miss Fielding gasped from inside before I reached it. Jasper! Her voice cracked on the name. Delaney stepped into the room and let his gaze sweep over the occupants. Wolfe, Naomi, Var. Me trailing behind. Wolfe said nothing. He didn't need to. He watched the detective the way a botanist watches a beetle, with interest but no affection. Naomi rose slowly, both hands gripping the back of the client's chair. Detective, Jasper was killed? Found in an alley off 54th, Delaney said. Multiple blunt force impacts, no weapon recovered, and before I got anywhere near next of kin, your name came up. Repeatedly. Naomi's knuckles went white. Who told you I was involved? That's the thing, Delaney said, pacing into the center of the office. Someone called the precinct anonymously. Told us to talk to you. Told us you had information. Told us you were the last person he argued with. That's not true, she said sharply. I haven't seen Jasper in days. Delaney wasn't moved. Maybe, maybe not. That's why I'm here. Wolfe cut in, his voice cool. Detective, Miss Fielding is my client. Delaney turned to him. Then you'll want to keep her talking, because someone's setting her up bad. On that, Wolfe said. We agree. Delaney's attention locked back onto Naomi. Miss Fielding, I need to know, did you contact Jasper Reinhardt at any point in the last 48 hours? No. Did he contact you? No. Did you know he was planning to visit the foundation today? She blinked in confusion. He wasn't scheduled to... Var spoke suddenly, voice dry. He showed up at reception this morning. Naomi whipped toward him. What? Var nodded, avoiding her eyes. Unannounced, he asked to see you. He seemed agitated. I told him you were unavailable. Delaney made a note. And what time was that? Around 10:30, Var said. I didn't tell Naomi. I didn't want to upset her. Wolfe finished for him dryly. You have an unfortunate habit of deciding what information she's allowed to receive. Tonality flinched. Delaney straightened. Miss Fielding, you and this Reinhardt, did you have disagreements? She swallowed. He was upset about the audit, angry, but he wasn't violent. What about someone else? Delaney pressed. Anyone at the foundation with a grudge against him? Wolfe made a small noise. Detective, before you distribute suspicion indiscriminately, perhaps you should hear the more salient detail. Delaney gave him a skeptical look. And what's that? Wolfe pointed to the cardboard box on the side table. Mr. Reinhardt was not killed at random. He was killed by someone who has been taunting Miss Fielding with objects of theatrical symbolism. Candlelight without flame. Delaney frowned. Come again? I opened the box, lifted the lid, and showed him the glowing candle. He jerked back half an inch. Just enough to mark the line between skepticism and unease. What is that? Some kind of trick lamp? Apparently not, Wolfe said. Delaney stared at it, then at Naomi. This was left for you. She nodded. In my apartment. And someone broke into this house as well, I added. Left messages, took photos, delivered warnings. Wolfe folded his hands. Detective, you are not dealing with a straightforward homicide. You are dealing with an architect of misdirection. Delaney rubbed his jaw. So you think this is connected to Reinhardt? I think, Wolfe said, that your killer has a fondness for elaborate displays. A corpse is the latest one. Delaney stared at the candle again. His skepticism softened into something colder, recognition that a simple case was turning into a puzzle he hadn't asked for. He faced Naomi. Ms. Fielding, you're coming with me. Wolfe shook his head. No. Delaney blinked. No. She is not leaving this house until I determine the extent of the threat against her. Delaney squared his stance. Mr. Wolfe, this is a murder investigation. This, Wolfe retorted, is a defense against a malignant intelligence. If you remove her now, you will be doing the killer's work for him. Naomi's breath caught, but she didn't speak. Delaney looked at Wolfe, at me, at Var, at the candle. Then, reluctantly, he lowered his hand from his badge. Fine, he said, but I'm not leaving without something. He stepped toward the desk. What do you require? Wolfe asked. Delaney pointed to the glowing candle. I want that. Wolfe stared at him. Everything went still. And then Wolfe said, in a tone like a door closing on a century, Detective Delaney, that you cannot have. I don't know which vein of stubbornness Wolfe tapped into when he told Detective Delaney that you cannot have, but it was one of the deep ones. Delaney froze like he wasn't sure he'd heard right. Most people don't get told no so firmly in this house unless they're salesmen or senators. Delaney squared off. Mr. Wolfe, he said, this is evidence. No, Wolfe replied, it is bait. That took the wind out of Delaney's sails long enough for Wolfe to lean back, lace his fingers over his stomach, and settle into his intellectual stride. Detective, he said, if you remove that candle, the killer wins. He relies on confusion. He scatters false leads the way a thresher scatters grain. The candle is his signature, a performance piece. Take it away, and you disturb the performance before the audience arrives. Delaney looked at me like he wanted a translation. He means, I said, someone wants us all dancing in the dark, and Wolfe's not big on choreography. Delaney exhaled through his nose but didn't reach for the candle again. His instincts were too sharp to ignore Wolfe entirely. Wolfe scanned the room, Naomi pale and rigid, Var sweating through his composure, Delaney braced for trouble, and me ready to move pieces into place if Wolfe started playing chess with real people. "Archie," he said, "close the drapes." That was odd. But I did it. The room dimmed until the candle's unnatural glow painted everything with a soft gold. Naomi shivered. Var looked hypnotized. Delaney looked annoyed. Wolfe continued, "Detective, you seek a murderer. I seek an intellect. Miss Fielding seeks safety, and Mr. Var seeks absolution. Fortunately, the culprit behind all this seeks attention." He pointed at the candle. "This is a toy. Clever, yes. Mechanically ingenious. But a toy. A distraction." Naomi whispered, "Then what is he really after?" Wolfe didn't answer her. He looked at Var. "Mr. Var, your visitor, the man who delivered the envelope. Describe him fully." I told you I didn't know him." "Describe him," Wolfe repeated. Var swallowed. "Tall. Younger than me. Maybe early 30s. Brown hair tied back, a beard, trimmed. Thin. Very thin." Naomi inhaled sharply. "No." Wolfe's gaze flicked to her. "You recognize the description." She pressed a hand to her mouth. "It can't be." "Name," Wolfe said. "Elias Reinhardt." That landed like a hammer. Even Delaney reacted. "Elias," he said. "Jasper's brother." Naomi nodded weakly. Half-brother, they weren't close. Elias was troubled, brilliant, unpredictable. He thought Jasper stole his artistic legacy. The board rejected Elias's proposal 3 years ago, a radical reinterpretation of devotional art. He disappeared after that. "And now reappears," Wolfe said dryly, "with a candle that glows without flame." Delaney swore under his breath. "Why didn't anyone tell me Jasper had a brother like that?" "Because," Wolfe said, "no one believed he would resurface, and because Miss Fielding has been trying to protect the foundation from scandal." Naomi flinched. I never imagined Elias would—" Wolfe interrupted her with a curt wave. "Miss Fielding, guilt is a useless indulgence. Elias Reinhardt is our culprit, but we still lack his purpose." Delaney barked. "His purpose was murdering Jasper." Wolfe shook his head. "No, that was incidental." "Incidental?" Delaney spat. "Yes, Elias desired something else. Something more symbolic, more luminous." Wolfe closed his eyes, thinking, and when he opened them, they were sharp enough to shave marble. "Archie," he said, "retrieve the candle from the box." I did, placing it carefully on the center of Wolfe's desk. Wolfe gestured at Naomi. "Miss Fielding, when Jasper Reinhardt learned his funds might be frozen, who did he blame?" "Me," she whispered. "He called me the night before the meeting, said I was sabotaging him." "And did you tell anyone about the call?" "No, I didn't want to bias the board." "Precisely," Wolfe said. "Jasper no doubt told Elias." Delaney frowned. "So Elias kills Jasper to—" "What?" "Avenge him." Wolfe exhaled, annoyed at being forced to explain something elementary. "No. Elias kills Jasper to frame Miss Fielding." Naomi gasped. I felt my shoulders tighten. It fit too well. Wolfe went on. "Elias saw the board's division as an opportunity. He orchestrated the candle as psychological warfare. Intrusions, riddles, performances. His goal was not fear. It was discrediting Naomi Fielding." Var choked out. "But why her?" "Because," Wolfe said, "Naomi Fielding represented the artistic standards that rejected him. If she fell, the foundation would fracture. Chaos would follow. His chaos." Delaney blinked. So the candle wasn't magic. No, Wolfe said with a glare suggesting the detective had insulted him. It is a device, a photoreactive phosphorescent wick with a concealed electric micro-element. Ingenious, but not supernatural. I added, meaning Elias built a fancy fake candle to scare people. Wolfe nodded. And placed duplicates where they would be discovered at precise psychological moments. Naomi whispered. Then, the photo of your office. Taken yesterday, Wolfe said. When Elias first entered this house. Delaney stiffened. Elias was here. Yes, Wolfe replied. And he will return. Naomi looked terrified. Var looked sick. I looked at Wolfe. Return? I asked. Why? Because, Wolfe said calmly. I left the front door unbolted. I stared at him. You did what? He gave me a look of pure impatience. Elias thrives on intrusion, on performance, on trespass, so we give him a stage. Delaney reached instinctively for his holster. You're using this house as bait? No, Wolfe said. I'm using Elias's ego. He believes himself unseen, unmatched, supernatural. A man who believes he is light without flame will always approach the darkness he wishes to illuminate. The words had barely left his mouth when the floorboard in the hallway creaked. Delaney spun. I moved to the office door. Wolfe raised a hand, not to stop us, but to command silence. Another step. Soft, careful. Then a figure appeared in the doorway, thin, tall, bearded, eyes bright with the kind of brilliance that eventually burns down the room it's in. Elias Reinhardt. He saw the candle on the desk. He smiled. He stepped inside. And Wolfe spoke, calm as a priest delivering a benediction. Mr. Reinhardt, please sit. Your performance is concluded. Elias froze. The one thing he hadn't expected. A man who lives by spectacle is undone the moment the audience refuses to react. Delaney moved first, fast and decisive, grabbing Elias's arm and twisting it behind his back. Elias struggled, wild, but it was over in seconds. The detective cuffed him, breath sharp. Wolfe lifted his glass of beer from the side table. Archie, he said, retrieve the duplicates on 54th when convenient. They are no longer of use. Yes, sir. Naomi sank into her chair, trembling with relief and shock. Var looked like he might faint. Elias screamed one last fragment of his manifesto as Delaney dragged him out. Wolfe took a slow sip and sighed. Taste, he said, is a virtue artists should cultivate, even in crime. I exhaled and leaned against the desk. So that's it? Wolfe didn't look at me. Archie, nothing is it. There is dinner. And that was our cue. As Delaney marched a raving genius out the door and Naomi Fielding gathered herself from the wreckage of a week she didn't deserve, the brownstone settled back into its familiar quiet, the kind that comes after storms, revelations, and pretenders to brilliance. Later that night, as Fritz brought out braised lamb and Wolfe returned to his orchids with the serenity of a man proven right, I looked at the candle one last time before boxing it for evidence. Still glowing, still smug. Wolfe noticed my hesitation. Archie, he said, ignore it. Light without flame is merely deception. Then he paused. But the truth, fortunately, requires no glow. I grinned. Sure, boss, but it makes a hell of a good story. It's 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 a hell of a good story.